right now with you. All right, friends, let's jump right into the Parsha. It is Parashat Chukat. We've been talking about it all week. It's the Parsha that talks about the red heifer as an antidote to coming into contact with a dead body, which, for those who don't know, there are traditions based in the Torah that would preclude someone whose ancestry includes a priest, a Kohen, and therefore they are a Kohen, from going to a cemetery, come into contact with a dead body. And we've reflected on how that relates to many of us as Americans being in a context where gun violence makes that pretty pervasive as a reality. There really isn't a spot in any neighborhood, in any state, where that doesn't impact us all. So that's on a social justice application level, a societal welfare application level of that idea. But what I wanted to do is take a step back and look at the red heifer itself, because the name of this week's parsha is Chukat, and Chukat means the law of. But Chukat has at its core the word chok, which is one kind of religious obligation, one type of commandment. In the Torah, traditionally understood, there are two categories of mitzvah, of command. One of them is called mishpat, one of them is called chok. A mishpat is the kind of law that you and I might develop ourselves if given the opportunity to build a society. Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, good borders, meaning boundaries between properties, how to adjudicate between cases, how to deal with lost items. Those are rational laws. The explanation is right there. It's very clear why they exist. But there are other kinds of laws that are called chukim, chok, a law that actually does not have a rationale. You can find meaning in it, but that's not the reason for it. One of the classic examples of a chok is keeping kosher. Some might say that that's a rule about eating healthy, but you and I know, and I know by experience, that you can keep punctilious kashrut, keep very, very careful about the rules of kashrut in your home, and not be healthy. Just because something has a hechsher, a kosher certification, or if it only has kosher ingredients, doesn't make it healthy. Nor when it comes to the shechting process, right, the slaughtering of animals for meat, nowhere is it clearer to me that you can have a system that purports to uphold the ethical dimensions of food preparation that falls far short, because factory farming of animals has led to incredible inequity, let alone the process of food. That's not to impugn the dignity of kashrut. It's simply to say that all the things that we usually ascribe to keeping kosher are not actually the reasons for keeping kosher. Keeping kosher is very much about being observant. There is a rule. Keep kosher. That's why. No explanation given. Well, this week's Parsha is entirely in that category. A chok is a mysterious law, a law that is irrational. Again, you can find meaning in it, but the meaning isn't the why behind it. This chok is about when a Kohen comes into contact with a dead body. What do? You take the red heifer, completely red. There's no blemish on it. It has never borne a yoke on its shoulders, says the Torah. And you offer it as a sacrifice. You take its ashes, you mix it with water, and someone sprinkles it, a priest sprinkles it onto the other priest. And it is very strange. I remember first learning this and thinking about Shakespearean scenes of bubble, bubble, toil, and trouble. That there is a magic to this, a strangeness to this. I was learning this parsha with a friend yesterday who we got to it and she said, "Oh, we have voodoo too," which is actually not so far from the emotional response many of us would have to this text. Really? A red heifer, and that's the antidote to come into contact with a dead body, and you mix it up and you sprinkle it. And it brought to mind a teaching by Professor Louis Ginsburg of the Jewish Theological Seminary in the 1920s. And he was a gifted Talmud student, a gifted teacher. And he said, when I was young and I started learning Talmud, I remember coming to the story in Masechet Baba Batra, in a tractate of the Gemara, where there was a goose that was purported to be so big, and you're all supposed to say, how big was he? So big that its head pierced the heavens and the waters of the oceans reached only to the goose's ankles. And I was very disturbed by that. He said, then I got older and I encountered a critical textual scholar, someone who was literarily minded, who said, no, there never was any goose. There's a metaphor to talk about grandeur and scope and scale and size. Professor Ginsburg continues and says, but as I got older, I began to believe that the goose was actually real, because how strange would it be for us not to have any magic in our stories? It also brings to mind a wonderful, enchanting movie some of you might be familiar with, Hook, in which Robin Williams, alav hashalom, plays Peter Pan, who's left Never Never Land and has grown up and forgotten that he's Peter Pan. And the movie really does center on his ability to regain a sense of wonder, a sense of magic. I look at this week's Parsha, and it makes no sense. It's irrational. It's called Chukat. It's called mysterious rule. And then I look at the details of the rule and it gets stranger. And so I can dismiss it and say I don't believe in fairies. Or I can hold it close and believe in magic once again, especially because the world, friends, as it appears in headlines and in news, it is astoundingly confusing, unmooring and destabilizing. That is our world. Our world is just as irrational, actually, as the story of the red heifer. What a gift it is, then, to look at the Torah and to recognize that it's offering us magic to counter the irrational, a mysterious way forward through life when it's impacted by the irrational bad. It's a strange kind of blessing to find ourselves in the midst of magic. And so to bless us with a little bit of the red heifer. If you believe that mixing the ashes of the red heifer with water and then sprinkling it on each other is the way forward, here's what I want to do. No more magical than that is me sending through the portal of your screen right now a little bit of magic. We learn in the Torah that there is a way forward. The way forward is not always about logic. It might be about love. It might be about magic. It might be about believing again. So I want to offer you that. This is the chok. This is the mysterious obligation, life. So blessing you with a magic that could fill your heart. And maybe if you think a happy thought, maybe we'll fly again.